I want to first start out by talking about where the ideas of membership, belonging, and soft skills fit within a positive behavior support framework. I think you will find that there are other ways that they could fit, but I'm going to share with you some of my ideas. I want to clarify some definitions of what I mean by membership, belonging, and soft skills, because those might, especially soft skills, might be a little bit of a new term for some of you. I want to talk to you about the potential barriers for students with autism, but we're not going to get too much into that because we all know what those barriers are. And then I want to speak to you mostly about the voices from people with autism themselves. So we've heard a lot today about recommendations from the literature and recommendations from researchers and practitioners, and I want to give individuals with autism a bit of a voice in some of this discussion, which seems relevant in talking about membership and belonging. And then finally, I'm going to give you an example from one of my studies illustrating, hopefully, how membership, belonging, and soft skills can work together. So, according to Dr. Lusishin and Dr. Freda Brown and many others, the 4 core areas of positive behavior support are valued outcomes, integration of various approaches, including biomedical, scientific, social science, the use of evidence-based practice, and promotion of systems change to support positive, sustainable growth. The area that I'm going to focus on today is going to be this idea of values. And within valued outcomes, successful inclusion competence, appropriate and effectively communicating wants and needs, and quality of life. And the way that I see those 3 values working together really have a lot to do with membership and belonging and development of soft skills. But first, let's talk about some definitions. This is a quote from Dr. Brené Brown, who's a qualitative researcher. She has done a couple of TED Talks. I am a huge fan of hers. If you have a chance to view any of her work, she discusses shame and vulnerability. But this is one of her quotes: "We're hardwired for connection. It's what gives us purpose and meaning to our lives. The absence of love, belonging, and connection always leads to suffering." And I think that this summarizes why membership and belonging and soft skills development are so important. So let's talk about some definitions about what this means. It's characterized by having a sense of equality among the individuals that are within the group, a mutual respect for one another, and reciprocity. So that idea of give and take, turn taking at the most basic level. One of the additive parts of this definition that I really like is from Dr. Eileen Schwartz, who you will hear from tomorrow. And she talks about with individuals with autism and other severe disabilities, are group members willing to make accommodations for that other participant? So do they just sort of change the rules on the spot? And we saw such a great example of this in the last presentation, where the child wasn't required to cook something in particular. Yes, they could cook the truck. That was perfectly fine. So do children tend to make those accommodations and those exceptions and kind of roll with them? Might they change the rules in a t-ball game, for example, for somebody who needed the rules changed so that everyone gets a chance to hit the ball? And the domain of membership is one of 3 of the essential domains or one of the 3 essential areas for successful inclusive schooling. So before I go on, I want to talk to you about soft skills. How many of you have heard that term before? Just raise your hand. Okay. There are various definitions in the literature. This definition I've taken from the BC's new curriculum. And so how many of you are familiar with BC's new curriculum? Core competencies, okay. So these are now the core competencies of the BC curriculum, which is interesting to see that shift in language. So soft skills to core competencies. And I think that hopefully you will see reflected in some of the rest of the presentation as well. So this idea that communication is important, creative thinking, critical thinking, positive, personal, and cultural identity and growth, personal awareness and responsibility, and also social responsibility. And here's just a little cartoon of Lucy saying that she is human and she needs to be loved, just like everybody else does. So one of the things I want you to focus on in this slide is, why are soft skills important? Soft skills are becoming more important to employers, mostly. Not only employers, but also practitioners and teachers as well. They're increasingly becoming seen as core skills. So we're seeing this not only in a shift in the BC curriculum, but also worldwide. This is from a World Economic Forum in terms of the Future of Work report. And so we're seeing that soft skills are becoming a differentiator for successful organizations. But interestingly, 94% of companies say that agility and collaboration are critical to their success, yet only 6% of them admit that they are able to utilize those skills. And then the next thing I want to direct your attention to is that stronger relationships and self-management skills are becoming increasingly popular. And so one of the things that's interesting about soft skills versus core skills, whichever one you want to talk about, however you want to define that, is that they're going to become increasingly more and more important. Because with the age of being able to ask Siri, you know, what's a neutron, what's a proton, how many elements are in the periodic table. I'm a STEM girl, so STEM naturally comes to mind. We don't necessarily have to have that automaticity in terms of technical information. Sure, it's helpful, sure we need it, but that idea of agility and flexibility, critical thinking, problem solving are going to become critical skills for the future. So we all know some barriers to social relationships that individuals with autism face. So they face access to typical settings in some cases, depending on where you are. In BC, we do have an inclusion initiative, but in many places in the United States, we do not. They have limited access to peers without disabilities in those gen ed settings. Access to high quality curriculum and instruction, and skills for facilitating interactions are limited. And so we've talked a little bit today about how to accommodate actually all four of those different areas from various perspectives, from peer perspectives, pivotal response, and various strategies. Traditionally, and you can sort of think of this broadly in terms of what we talked about today, we've thought of things as social skills or cultivating the environment. But I want to challenge us to sort of give more bang for our buck. I'm going to give you an illustrated example of, can we do all of those things?